British Airways is trapped in a crisis called Boeing 787. The Dreamliners, once praised as the symbol of aviation's future, have now turned into a headache with a series of serious technical failures. A plane had to return urgently less than 60 minutes after takeoff due to an unresponsive flap. The chilling part is warnings about these deadly incidents had already been issued before, but Boeing remained silent. No explanation, no public corrective action. That silence, now, is dragging British Airways to the brink of global operational paralysis right at the peak of the travel season. How much further will the nightmare called Dreamliner drag this airline into trouble? Facing a string of life-threatening incidents, does Boeing still have a chance to fix this and regain public trust? This video will expose everything that has been hidden. Inside the storm, a dangerous combination so severe that even Boeing dares not speak its name. In June 2025, British Airways flight BA217 had to make an emergency turnaround less than 60 minutes after departing from Heathrow. The reason: the flaps, a critical component that adjusts lift during takeoff, were jammed and failed to retract after leaving the ground. The malfunction prevented the Boeing 787 from gaining stable altitude, forcing the crew to dump nearly 12 tons of fuel over Kent skies, then urgently return to Heathrow amid panicked screams from passengers. Just one mechanical deviation, but enough to bring the flight to the brink of disaster. Less than 30 days later, another Dreamliner encountered an equally bizarre issue. The aircraft remained motionless on the tarmac, despite no prior system warning. The central electronic system, often described as the brain of the aircraft, suddenly froze. Pilots could not start the engines, could not activate the air system, and could not deliver even the most basic announcements. Passengers were stuck inside the cabin for nearly 3 hours, completely left in the dark amid a technological breakdown, until technical orders arrived to cancel the flight and evacuate everyone on board. Two incidents, seemingly unrelated, are actually just the visible tip of a vast iceberg. A sequence of abnormal technical malfunctions is silently surrounding British Airways' 787 fleet. Errors that do not follow any detectable pattern, do not appear on regular alert lists, and, most critically, are not easily repairable even for the airline's most seasoned engineers. Internal sources from the airline revealed several veteran captains have quietly started refusing to operate the Boeing 787 on certain routes. "We no longer feel like we're fully in control of this aircraft," a pilot who requested anonymity shared. You can prepare everything thoroughly, but just one minor software glitch, a sensor valve malfunction, or an unresponsive component, and the entire flight will be pushed into a passive, unstable state. Engineers refer to this as the condition of too smart to be stable, where the system becomes so complex and advanced that even the smallest failure can trigger uncontrollable chain reactions. And what's even more alarming, the recent malfunctions are only the beginning of a far deeper crisis looming ahead. If the technical failures are the early warning signs, then the true danger lies within the aircraft's physical structure itself. Since 2020, routine inspections at the factory have uncovered numerous Boeing 787s with ultra-thin gaps between layers of composite, the core material used to form the plane's fuselage. These gaps, just fractions of a millimeter, were located at stress-critical points during takeoff and landing. With metal aircraft, this might be considered a minor flaw, but with composites, extremely lightweight yet highly sensitive to pressure and temperature changes, even the smallest imperfection can silently weaken the structure over time. The chain of incidents shows no sign of stopping. In early 2024, an internal investigation at the South Carolina factory, where most Dreamliners are assembled, revealed a shocking truth: many staff members had checked off technical inspection reports without performing any actual checks. They signed off on the fuselage as meeting standards without using scanners, measuring pressure, or testing the adhesion of materials. As a result, at least 11 Boeing 787 aircraft were urgently recalled in just the first quarter. A former technical expert who worked at Boeing issued a chilling warning: with such types of flaws, the Dreamliner's fuselage could begin to degrade after only 10 to 12 years of use instead of the 25 years originally designed. Cracks won't appear immediately, but with every flight, the tension, compression, and vibrations will gradually erode the joints. And one day you'll be too late to react, he said. And if the airframe is quietly deteriorating from within, then the so-called heart of the Dreamliner, the Rolls-Royce Trent 1000 engine, presents a hazard so clear it can no longer be ignored. Since 2016, major airlines like ANA British Airways and Vietnam Airlines have begun reporting alarming issues: turbine blade cracking, engine core corrosion, and rapid decline in performance. Subsequent engineering analyses identified two root causes: substandard heat-resistant materials and a design that fails to adapt to harsh operating environments in many regions. The situation became even more serious when Rolls-Royce carried out a comprehensive inspection across its system, and the results sent chills through the aviation industry. Numerous similar signs of degradation were found in many Trent 1000 engines, including those that had been in service for less than 5 years. Faced with this escalating risk, the company was forced to launch a global parts replacement program, a complex operation that triggered a series of cascading effects. From 2023 to 2025, statistics showed that over 30% of the global Boeing 787 fleet had to be grounded for extended periods due to a shortage of replacement parts that Rolls-Royce could not supply in time. British Airways was no exception. At one point, at least 10 of its Dreamliners had to cancel their entire flight schedules for several weeks simply because there weren't enough engines available to operate. The crisis deepened further when the global supply chain disruption, triggered after the pandemic, caused replacement components, especially the new generation turbine blades, to fall into a state of trickle production, unable to keep up with demand. An internal source revealed there was a time when Rolls-Royce's main factory could only deliver 4 sets of components within 30 days, a figure far too low to sustain continuous operations across the global fleet. But what caused the most public outrage was not the supply issue itself. A recently leaked internal document showed that as early as 2018, Rolls-Royce had warned Boeing that certain heat-resistant components in the Trent 1000 engine had a shortened lifespan and were not suitable for the expected flight intensity described in the design specs. However, Boeing ignored the warning and continued delivering hundreds of Dreamliners to global airlines without upgrading the engine configuration. The result: the very aircraft once praised for durability and efficiency have now become grounded assets, repeatedly pulled from schedules costing airlines millions of dollars per month in maintenance, disrupted timetables, and mass ticket cancellations from frustrated passengers. Planes, grounded passengers, outraged schedules, and disarray. British Airways is witnessing its global network unravel flight by flight. Passengers hadn't even boarded the plane when they received the message, "Flight canceled." The luckier ones ended up sitting on an old Airbus, no Wi-Fi, no screen, no prior notice. They thought they would be flying on a Dreamliner, the 21st century symbol of comfort. But reality was far from the advertisement. This is no longer an isolated incident. It is a partial collapse in the global network of British Airways, a carrier once considered the pride of European aviation. In the summer of 2025, the most critical travel season of the year, British Airways abruptly erased its London-Abu Dhabi route. No press release, no explanation. The route vanished from the system as if it had never existed. Estimated loss: over $18 million in just 3 months. Next came reduced frequency or downgraded aircraft on routes to Accra, Nairobi, Hyderabad, Bangkok. Some long-haul routes were even temporarily transferred to partner airlines within the One World Alliance as a desperate move to cope with the growing wave of passengers. But all these efforts are merely patchwork solutions, because the root of the problem, the grounded Dreamliners, remains unchanged. British Airways owns 41 Boeing 787s, but at times, up to 15 of them are on the ground without engines, without spare parts, or awaiting indefinite repairs. The fleet, once considered the backbone of intercontinental routes, has now become a motionless burden. Expansion plans are paralyzed. New routes to Santiago, Seoul, and Vancouver, once expected to mark a post-pandemic growth era, have been canceled or postponed indefinitely. The airline is even having to consider reducing frequencies on existing routes just to distribute the few remaining operational aircraft. One senior executive admitted, "We're no longer doing strategy. We're piecing together broken parts every day just to keep the system from collapsing." At the same time, outrage is spreading quickly across forums and social media. Passengers are sharing images of outdated cabins, templated apologies, and delayed responses from customer service. One person wrote, "I bought the ticket because they advertised a Dreamliner. What I got was indifference, carelessness, and a half-hearted apology." British Airways, once a global pioneer, is now merely trying to keep its flights from falling apart day by day. And the tragedy is this: they have no control over what's happening, because the key doesn't lie in London, it lies in Everett, in South Carolina, and in the factories that Boeing itself no longer seems to control. Amid a chaotic fleet, disrupted schedules, and growing passenger frustration, British Airways was forced to respond. But what they did, or failed to do, only made the situation worse. The airline announced it would offer refunds, rebookings, or place passengers on partner alliance flights, depending on each case. However, the inconsistency and slow response time have flooded social media with outrage, compensation demands, and even threats of lawsuits. Many passengers reported they weren't informed in advance about the aircraft switch, only discovering it after boarding and realizing they were on an old Airbus A321 instead of the Dreamliner shown on their ticket. The stark difference in experience, from seat space, cabin noise, and smoothness to amenities like Wi-Fi and personal screens, left many feeling deceived. A spokesperson for the airline admitted, "We're facing an unprecedented challenge since the pandemic. Shortages in parts, delayed aircraft deliveries, and technical issues are beyond our control." However, the lack of transparency and sluggish response have only deepened public skepticism. Many are asking, why isn't the airline clearly disclosing the issues facing its aircraft? Why are schedules and aircraft types being changed without a proper explanation? British Airways, once a symbol of British aviation, now finds itself on the defensive, scrambling to put out fires daily as the Dreamliner crisis shows no sign of resolution. And when even British Airways can no longer hold the line, the world is forced to confront an undeniable truth. Boeing is dragging the entire aviation industry into a spiraling crisis. And now even Boeing itself is edging toward a full-blown reputation crisis. It began with action from the FAA, the most powerful aviation authority in the United States. In May 2025, the Federal Aviation Administration (FAA) officially launched a large-scale investigation at the South Carolina plant, the primary assembly site for the Boeing 787 line. The investigation not only focused on newly completed aircraft, but also reopened the full set of production records from 2020 to 2024, involving allegations of procedural violations, falsified inspection reports, and technical breaches during manufacturing. One of the initial findings sent shockwaves through the public. Many mandatory inspection steps were deliberately and systematically skipped, especially in areas like composite bonding checks and fuselage alignment. In some cases, technical forms were pre-printed with engineers' signatures, even though no actual inspections had taken place. Under mounting pressure from airlines and the public, the FAA issued a mandate requiring Boeing to implement a dual-layer independent inspection process for all wide-body models and to submit monthly technical reports detailing error correction progress and the status of delivered aircraft. This marks the first time since the 737 MAX crisis that Boeing has once again come under special oversight. But this time, the target isn't just one model, it's the entire manufacturing chain. Yet the crisis doesn't stop there. The second phase production gridlock. Boeing now faces a situation of completed but undeliverable. In aviation, a delay of even a few weeks can destabilize entire flight schedules. But Boeing is grappling with something far worse. Hundreds of Dreamliners have had their fuselages assembled, interiors completed and even painted in airline liveries, but they remain grounded in factories because there are no engines available to install. At the South Carolina facility, the main assembly site for the Boeing 787 line, dozens of aircraft fuselages, nearly 60 meters long, lie stacked outdoors, covered in dust-proof tarps, motionless like bodies, waiting for their hearts. All are awaiting the same thing: engine units that remain missing from the supply chain. According to internal sources, some of these aircraft were fully assembled as early as Q3 2024. Yet by mid-2025, still had no engines installed. The cause comes from both directions. Rolls-Royce, manufacturer of the Trent 1000 engines, is still overwhelmed by repair campaigns, part replacements, and is nearly unable to supply new units. Meanwhile, General Electric, producer of the GE NX alternative, is facing its own post-pandemic logistics crisis, with production running 40% behind schedule. The situation becomes even more unworkable due to the impossibility of engine substitution. Each Boeing 787 is specifically designed for a particular engine variant, making it technically and legally impossible to temporarily swap to a different engine type. The result, an entire industrial chain has stalled at its final stage. Boeing cannot deliver completed aircraft, airlines lack sufficient fleet capacity, and global air route networks are beginning to fracture from within. British Airways, Lufthansa, Air Europa, and even American Airlines are among those directly impacted. The financial consequences for Boeing are staggering. Each undelivered 787 represents hundreds of millions of dollars frozen on the books, while the company continues to pay interest on loans, warehouse storage fees, staff salaries, and keep production lines active. An industry expert commented, "There has never been a precedent in modern aviation where a major aircraft manufacturer is brought to a standstill, simply because engines are unavailable." This cascade of failures has dragged Boeing into one of the most severe consequence chains in its corporate history. At present, Boeing is facing a wave of potential lawsuits from affected airlines. Delays in delivery, failure to meet safety configurations as contractually agreed, and the lack of full disclosure on technical faults are the three central issues that many carriers are using to prepare legal action. British Airways, Lufthansa, and several members of the One World Alliance are believed to have issued formal ultimatums demanding compensation from Boeing for incurred losses, including temporary aircraft replacement costs, revenue loss due to canceled flights, and crisis management expenses in response to passenger backlash. But the pressure isn't limited to the airlines. Major institutional investors, from American pension funds to industrial conglomerates, have begun reassessing their long-term supply agreements with Boeing. Many forward purchase contracts, structured over years with phased deliveries, are now being paused, renegotiated, or outright canceled. In the first quarter of 2025 alone, Boeing reported over 40 Dreamliner orders delayed or withdrawn, an unprecedented number since the 737 MAX crisis. Boeing stock, once dubbed the sky blue steel of Wall Street, has fallen more than 27% in just 6 months. Credit rating agencies have begun issuing warnings of potential downgrades if Boeing fails to regain control of its technical and production disruptions. The crisis surrounding the 787 is no longer a problem confined to British Airways. It is now spreading across the entire global aviation value chain. The Dreamliner crisis is throwing the entire global aviation industry into turmoil. From the Americas to Asia, many major airlines are facing the same predicament: grounded aircraft, canceled routes, disrupted schedules, and declining passenger confidence. In the United States, American Airlines has just suspended operations of 5 Boeing 787s after detecting abnormal vibrations in the engines. The airline has requested a full inspection of its entire Dreamliner fleet within 45 days, a move considered unprecedented unless there is a serious underlying concern. Air Europa Spain, a long-time Boeing customer, was forced to transfer its Madrid-Sao Paulo route to a partner after 4 out of its 10 Dreamliners were grounded. A company representative admitted, without replacement parts or engines, we can no longer maintain a stable flight schedule. Air New Zealand also issued a direct statement by the end of 2025. At least 11 of its 18 Boeing 787s will have to be taken out of service in rotation for engine replacement. This situation has forced the airline to cancel routes to South America and the Middle East, a significant setback in its post-pandemic expansion strategy. Even across Asia, airlines such as Vietnam Airlines Scoot and Japan Airlines are in a similarly passive position. Several Dreamliners are grounded while waiting for new engines from Rolls-Royce or General Electric. Some smaller carriers have resorted to wet leasing aircraft from partners just to keep their international routes running, at nearly double the usual operational cost. As of July 2025, preliminary estimates indicate that nearly 140 Boeing 787s worldwide are either completely grounded or operating under severe limitations. The majority are affected by unresolved technical issues or the lack of spare parts from the manufacturer. And this is just the visible portion of the crisis. A source from an independent technical organization in Europe stated, "We're currently tracking at least 27 airlines showing signs of being impacted by Boeing 787-related problems, but only a few have made it public. The rest are staying silent to avoid panic." The Dreamliner crisis is no longer confined to technical documents. It's now spreading across the entire aviation sector. And the most troubling question remains, is the next flight truly safe? British Airways is no longer just an airline dealing with issues from a single aircraft model. They now stand at the front line of an industry-wide crisis, where the Boeing 787, once hailed as a technological milestone, has become a burden pushing the entire system into overload. From Dreamliners collecting dust in storage to shattered schedules, outraged passengers, and frozen contracts, every signal shows British Airways has been drawn into a game they cannot control, where the power no longer rests with them but with Boeing. And now the question is no longer when will this crisis end, but how much longer can British Airways endure before they are forced to abandon the Dreamliner dream to save their global network. If you found this video informative, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel so you won't miss future in-depth analyses. Share your thoughts in the comments section below. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you for watching. And as always, the information in this video is for reference and analysis only. Please consult multiple official sources to gain a fuller, more objective understanding.